Do you know anything about your twin that we should know?
John
have anybody?
Ginger actually knows more about that one, but she's not saying.
I guess people say that I know the most about John's relationship status. And my answer to that, the info I know, is ask John.
I try to be pretty tight-lipped when people tell me about
You
things.
can keep any secret. And then
sometimes.
you act surprised and you're like, oh, really?
26.
I don't know why they're so hung up on me finding a woman.
Hey you guys, it's Katie from Without a Crystal Ball. Welcome back to my channel. It's Wednesday, November 10th. It is my birthday and I have had a day where I am just legitimately being lazy, but there has been some new filings in court that I should talk to you about because y'all are obsessed with the Josh Duggar case. And let's see how this all plays out because the prosecutors have responded to some of Josh's requests that certain things be left out of the case or not allowed to be admissible into the case or into the trial, let's just say. So Josh Duggar's pretrial hearing is on November 18th, and these motions, the responses were due today. And the judge, if he doesn't make a ruling on some of these motions, they will have to orally argue these motions to the judge on November 18th. In regards to his issues with his online habits and his infidelity with his wife and Ashley Madison leak. So one of the motions that the government filed was that they wanted to, and they said they would be, bringing in statements that Josh had made in the past about how he had struggled with addiction to online adult content. And because of that, they would need to use these statements to explain why a specific software had been installed onto his computer. Josh had made a statement back in 2015 after after everything came out about the Ashley Madison website. So a leak had occurred on Ashley Madison and he was found to be a user. And then on the Duggar's website, he made a statement about how he was a hypocrite and that while he was espousing family beliefs and family values, he was unfaithful to his wife and had developed an addiction to online pee. Well, they clap back to him in saying that your conduct online is admissible because it helps explain your activities. They say that his activities are admissible, or his statements are admissible. At least that's their argument. So what they're saying is that their response says that they are coming to respond to his motion to exclude evidence of allegations concerning adultery or prior so-called addiction to online pee. And they go on to say that he has been charged in the 2-count indictment and it's currently set for trial on November 30th of 2021. On November 3rd, Duggar filed a motion requesting this court enter an order to exclude at trial the matter evidence of allegations concerning adultery or addiction to online pee. In the November 3rd, 2021, the government filed a motion requesting the court issue a pretrial ruling deeming admissible prior statements by the defendant regarding his online pee addiction. They say, as explained in the government's motion, evidence regarding the defendant's asserted addiction to pee is admissible as a statement of a party opponent as intrinsic evidence that provides necessary context for the criminal conduct here, and under Federal Rule of Evidence 404, the government adopts those same arguments in its response to the defendant's instant motion and will not repeat them here. So they're basically saying, we already filed a motion which says this is why we believe that this is going to be admissible, so there's no reason for us to argue that here. And they said this: the government does not intend to elicit testimony in its case in chief regarding Duggar's infidelity or his participation on the Ashley Madison website. However, the government reserves the right to question Duggar should he take the stand on his character, including truthfulness and on that purported characteristic. At that point, evidence related to his adultery would be relevant and ripe for cross-examination. And they referenced United States versus Jackson, affirming cross-examination of character witnesses regarding defendant's affair and whether knowledge of his affair would change the witness's opinion as to the defendant's character for truthfulness. So cheating on your wife can be deemed being untruthful. And they said that evidence of Johnson's arrest for criminal impersonation and of the fact that Johnson had been unfaithful to his wife and untruthful to his paramour was probative of his character for truthfulness or untruthfulness. For the foregoing reasons, the United States requests that they deny his motion in limine. So basically what they're saying is that we're not going to bring up your adultery or your involvement on the website unless you were going to take the stand, and then we would sort of cross-examine you and ask you some questions about whether or not you are truthful. And if you have a problem with lying, we're going to ask you those questions. So that's where it could become relevant, is if you go to the stand. But we're not bringing this into the case simply on the fact of it's not relevant. But what is relevant, they're saying, is the addiction, because to them it explains the conduct here and explains why he had Covenant Eyes installed on his computer and why that his wife had known about this, and so he was trying to bypass his accountability partner, who was Anna, who would have been alerted if he was going online. And so what he had to do was install the partition, and then to get around the Covenant Eyes, and then he went onto the partition and did looked at the content on that side. They also said that the addiction explained sort of reasons for why he would download this content and why he would be involved in this kind of conduct online. So for them, it helps to explain the overall story of why he ended up in his work that day downloading that content. Now, on to the next one. One of the things that Josh wants to do is he wants to sequester the witnesses. And I didn't really talk with you guys about this, but his argument was that he wanted to enter an expansive order sequestering witnesses during trial and requesting that the government, but not defense, be prohibited from speaking with its own witnesses during trial. So they wanted to make it so the government couldn't even speak to their own witnesses during the trial, and they also wanted to make it so the witnesses couldn't speak to each other during the trial, even if they had already testified, but they didn't want to extend that same courtesy to themselves, which doesn't really make sense. So basically what they're saying is that it says sequestration of most witnesses is mandatory when requested, but the district court is granted wide latitude in implementing sequestration orders. If the defendant desires to invoke the rule regarding witness sequestration, that is his right, and the government has no objection. But they do oppose defense counsel's assertion that the court should deviate from its standard practice and adopt a more expansive interpretation of Rule 615 that is not required by and to the degree described below, contrary to the controlling authority of this circuit. The evidence 615, it says it requires that a party request the court shall order witnesses excluded so that they cannot hear other witness testimony. However, this rule has traditionally been interpreted by the Eighth Circuit narrowly to only reach the actual courtroom presence of witnesses. Notably, this rule does not by its terms forbid an attorney from conferring with witnesses during trial. Finding no violation of 615 or court order where a police officer took notes during the trial and relayed them to witnesses waiting to testify, the record does not indicate that the trial court's order prohibited agent-witness contact, and such order need not do so meet the requirements of Rule 615. So, in fact, the Eighth Court has previously held that 615 does not authorize trial courts to prevent executive branch officials from conferring with their witnesses. Other courts have similarly rejected this reading of 615. The relevant authorities interpreting Rule 615, including court decisions and leading commentators, agree that sequestration orders prohibiting witnesses should and do permit witnesses to discuss the case with counsel for either party. So in response to that, what they're saying is that the defendant sets forth only a vague notion that a more expansive reading of this is necessary, citing the nature of the allegations and the significance of prior statements certain witnesses allegedly made. The defendant does not elaborate on what specifically about the nature of the allegations in this case warrant such restrictive readings of 615. Indeed, the statements of witnesses are significant in virtually all criminal trials, and the defendant fails to provide any case-specific reasons for this court to deviate from its normal sequestration practice. As to the defendant's specific request for an order prohibiting only the government from talking to their own witnesses, this request is contrary to the above cited Eighth Circuit precedent and should be denied. So basically what they say is we would request that the honorable court follow its standard customary with regards to the witnesses, and to the extent that the defense is requesting the government be prohibited from speaking with its own witnesses during trial, the government asks this court to deny the defendant's request as it's contrary to controlling authority. Josh wanted to prevent the prosecutors from being able to talk to their own witnesses during the trial. Seriously. And that the argument here is that this is completely contrary to anything that has ever been ruled on in that circuit, and because of that, it doesn't apply here and it shouldn't be applied. But then the fact that they're saying that the government can't, but they can, also doesn't seem to hold any weight either. They are just really wanting to limit the ability of the government to present a case, period. I mean, they want to remove everything. They want to remove all of his previous history. They want to remove their ability to communicate with their witnesses without any cause or any reason. And now they want to say, well, you can't talk to your witnesses, but we can, which makes no sense. I really don't know if this one will be denied or not, but it sounds like based on the court precedents here, and courts generally don't like to deviate from what's already been decided simply because there has to be a really good argument for it, and they say he doesn't have any arguments for that. And then finally, Josh had wanted the expert testimony that had been given by Gerald Faulkner about the content that was found on his computer to not be allowed in the court for testimony. During the bond hearing, Gerald Faulkner stated that the content that was found on Josh's computer was in the top 5 worst of the CSAM he had ever seen online. And Josh had said that this is a opinion that is prejudicial because it implies that one kind of CSAM is worse than another kind of CSAM and all kinds are bad. And they say this: the defendant filed a motion to exclude the government from presenting any evidence relating to any opinion characterizing CP. The defendant's motion focuses on a statement made during the detention hearing in this matter, in which the testifying agent described a certain series of CSAM as among the worst CSAM he has ever seen. The defendant argues that testimony of this nature should be excluded as irrelevant under federal rules of 401 and 402, unfairly prejudicial under 403, and improper expert testimony under 701. They responded by saying this: the United States does not intend to elicit any testimony in its case in chief suggesting that CSAM recovered from the defendant's computer is worse than any other CSAM. To the extent the defendant is seeking to exclude some other testimony, however, the government opposes this motion. The defendant has not identified any other allegedly improper opinion of testimony that he believes should be excluded, nor has he provided any explanation for why such unidentified testimony should be excluded under any of the federal rules of evidence. Accordingly, if the defendant is seeking to exclude some other testimony beyond the CSAM found on his computer is worse than other CSAM, his motion is inadequately briefed and premature at best and should therefore be denied. So I don't know if Josh's lawyers were trying to anticipate that things in court would be said that they didn't want to be, said by the experts in this case. And their argument is that they're not going to really be asking anyone about whether or not this is worse or better, or if it's the worst of the worst. They aren't going to be asking those questions, but they're also saying that they have zero intention of bringing this up at the court case. But if there's other testimony that he somehow wants to exclude, he hasn't argued this well enough, and so therefore it should be denied by the court. They're basically saying, like, we don't disagree with you. We're not going to even talk about that at trial, but you can't, like, prevent other opinions to be made at trial. So Josh wants to basically remove police from saying their thoughts about what was found on the computer. And their argument was that Gerald Faulkner isn't a professional and isn't an expert. I mean, he's the freaking HSI agent. I don't know what more you want from Faulkner to prove to you that he's an expert in this, but I mean, I will say that it doesn't really, there's a point here that yes, all of it is bad, all of it's horrible, and sure, yes, some of it has features that appear worse, but as a whole, all of it is bad. So arguing that it's worse or worse of the worst doesn't really change the fact of what was found. What was found on the computer will come into play with his sentencing, and that's where it really matters, is what was on there, what were the ages, what was happening in the videos, and if it contains certain things that Josh was looking at, that can increase sentencing. So that's where it's going to impact him, but it's not going to necessarily impact him in the trial. I mean, he's not going to be able to escape the fact that the jurors are going to have the opportunity to see all of the evidence that they collected from that computer. And once they see it, you can't unsee it. And it's, you know, I guess at that point it becomes irrelevant what anyone else thinks and what others' opinions are of it, because they're going to be able to see it and form their own opinions and be like, this is horrible, or, oh yeah, this is, you know, they're not going to, everyone that's watching this is going to think it's terrible, it's awful, it's disgusting. No one's going to be watching this and thinking, oh, this is great, except for apparently Josh, who was downloading it. So Josh is just trying to eliminate the options of the government to really do their job, to try their case. And so far, none of this has been working, and I'll see if they have any responses to the government's motions from today. But they, interestingly, did not respond to anything related to the testimony or anything about his prior conduct as a minor. So there has been no responses in regards to that. That might come later today, but thus far they're still arguing about the what's related to the sisters, what he did to his sisters, and then that has been yet to be answered. The final thing that Josh had asked the court was to not allow them to say that, well, he refused to answer these questions, and so because of that, there's an implication that he refused to ask them because he felt like they imply that he's guilty, and they don't want them to say that. I don't think they would do that at trial, to be honest. Nothing that they've done thus far has been the trial, which has different rules of procedure than what's been happening outside of trial. So let's see what your thoughts are. The government says your history is relevant. We really don't plan to do this when it comes to testimony of the agents. And when it comes to witnesses, you can't not let us talk to our witnesses. If you get to talk to yours, and it's completely not in the rules, and the court has never allowed this, so good luck, Jack. Josh Duggar trying to remove everything so that he's acquitted. Tell me what your thoughts are in the comments below. Bye, guys.